Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of OptionVue Essentials. Saying, the audio connected. What we're going to talk about today is setting up
Start the recording again, and I'll share my desktop again. Apologies for that. So what I want to do is, for the benefit of new users, let me start out again. This is for OptionVue Essentials. Welcome, everyone. And what I'm going to do is show some new, some old, as far as just giving a wide variety of features. In other words, for new users and for old users as well. So we're going to show some of the new features. For those of you who have already been using OptionVue initially, although I just want to show how you would set it up in a short period of time so that you can use it efficiently day in, day out. So this is what I would do. When you're first getting the program, so what I did is I set up a test copy of OptionVue. This is how it would look when you first get the program, and nothing has been entered except the default symbols in the quotes display. This is our main page in OptionVue. So it just gives you quotes. And last change, you can change these headings just by clicking on a header bar and clicking Insert on your keyboard. That will add a column, and if you right-click, it shows you all the available columns. You can move these around, and like this is a good one, earnings announcement date. If I put that one in, it will tell you for all stocks what the next earnings that's coming out is. And you can change the order of these also. Now, one of the nice features of the quotes display, we can organize it according to tabs. So I can, instead of having to scroll down, if I just put all my symbols, I could put an unlimited number of symbols on this one page, but then I'm going to have to start scrolling down. It gets harder to locate your symbols. What you can do instead is just right-click, add a tab, and we're going to create a new tab name here. Say I wanted to add a Futures tab. So now I've got a tab, and what we do, and within one tab, you can create groupings. So say I wanted to add a grouping called Commodities, and the way you add a grouping is just hold the Shift key down, type pound, and start typing in a name, and then hit Enter. So now I've got a header, and that allows you to organize according to groupings within one tab, and also transfer everything under that grouping to another tab if you wanted to. So now, assuming that you want a bunch of futures in here and you didn't know what the symbols were, this is a common concern, especially for new OptionVue users. How do you get the correct future symbols in here? And there is an easy way to do it. So what I'm going to do is show you one of our features called Survey. And this is going to actually allow me to insert into the quotes display all the future symbols that I want up to date, with the current symbol. So I'm just going to create a survey here based on greatest dollar volume, but I'm not going to give it a number, just call it 0. So in other words, it's going to find everything. And under assets of type for the survey, I'm just going to say commodities. And then we'll go ahead and run that search. And it's going to come up with a bunch of symbols. And now I can highlight them all. I can scroll down here. And how many do we have? Looks like that's it. Okay. So just hold the Shift key down, highlight them all, and then click Insert. It doesn't look like it did anything, but I click Window, go back to the quotes display. By the way, this is how you navigate around the program. This is helpful for old users of OptionVue as well. It's the best way to navigate around the program rather than closing windows out and having to then later reopen them. Just click the window and it tells you all your open windows down here in this section. So now I go back to the quotes display. There's all those future symbols. With the latest, see these change as each expiration it comes up with a new letter code and number code if the year switches. So now we've got our future symbol set up. Now say I wanted to transfer this to a different grouping. I could do that. See if I do it Futures 2. We'll call a new tab Futures 2. And I could call this just Futures. And what I can do then is go back to that previous tab, highlight the header first, then right-click it and say move this group over to Futures 2. So it just put it all over into Futures 2 now. So I moved that over. You can do the same thing. Say you had a bunch of symbols in your main quotes display. You can separate them out. Say I wanted one for the VXX trading. Same thing. I would just right-click down here, add a tab, create a VXX tab, enter, go back to the main, highlight the header, left-click it, in other words, right-click, say move it over into the VXX, and now it's gone and it's over here. So that way you can organize, and you can also change the order here. Now you notice I've got 4 tabs. Actually on my real version of OptionVue, like I mentioned, this is just a test version I set up for purposes of this presentation. But I've got like 15 or 20 of these. Say you wanted to change the order of them, just right-click, Manage Tabs, highlight, and then you can adjust the order, like so. Now, one other feature that's just been added recently is a toolbar. By right-clicking anywhere on a row, I'm going to get a toolbar for that symbol. The first one here will open a matrix. Okay, so that will give me the matrix. The second one, it's going to right-click again, will give me a price chart. And the third will give me any alerts that I have, or allow me to set a new alert. So say I wanted to find out if IBM goes above 200, just type in 200. Under Action, you could click Send an Email for ease of demonstration here. I'm just going to leave it at Display Message. If you do want to send an email, then you're going to need to click Action Details and fill out that information, but we won't do that now. I'm sure you can figure that out. Click OK, and now the alert is set, and it shows up in this Alerts column here. So now if IBM during the trading day gets above 200, I'll get an alert on my screen. Right-click again. That's the next one on the list here is News. It's going to take me to Yahoo Finance News. And that just takes you outside of OptionVue, so you're going to have to click OptionVue again to get back. But there's the News. And right-click again. The next one on the list here is the Properties box. In case you needed to create an asset file, that's how you would get to that, or change the smallest tick, which sometimes is needed. Right-click again. DA stands for Delete Asset File. We don't need to in this case, but that will allow you to do it. It says not found because I haven't created one yet. Same here. This deletes the price chart, basically. We're going to say no. So that's basically how you would set up the quotes display. We're done with that now. What I want to move on to is a matrix. So we'll take Apple as an example. I'm going to open up a matrix for Apple. First thing I want to do is I like to see more information than this on a matrix. I don't necessarily want to just look at 3 columns. I want to see more data instantly without having to. There is a way to just see all the data for an option by double-clicking. It opens this, we call it an expand window. Gives all the option parameters available. But if I want to see it all in one screen, I can create my own customized format by clicking this Format button here. Fourth from the left on the second row of buttons. This row of buttons, by the way, will not be available unless you're in a matrix. So what you'll see normally on any window in the program is this top row of buttons. But normally this will not be there unless you're in the matrix window. So once you're in that window, click Format. And now we're going to change the cell size for the options to a 1 by 6, which is my preference. And in there, then I want to change it to I'll change the top one to time premium for the 5th column, and we'll change it to theta for the last one. You can make any of these how you like it, but now the next important step is you have to click Set Default 1, 2, or 3 here. I'm going to click 1. Click OK. Now it changes it, but if I didn't click that Set Default 1, the next time I close the matrix, reopen, it would be back to the default, the program default. It would not save it. So now I've saved one format. If I want another one, just go back in, change these columns. I like to have another one with delta. So we'll create one with delta and original price. This will allow you to see the price of your spread. Say you sold a credit spread and you want to see how much credit you got. It'll show you here when you have an existing position, which we'll get to in just a moment, what the price of that spread was. You can compare it to the actual price to see where you're sitting. And another one you might just set up for Greeks. But now if I want to say I'm going to go to the third one, this is the program default for that third setting there. If I want to get back to the one I just created, just click the 1, 2, or 2. Those are the ones I saved. I didn't actually save that one. That was my mistake. So I have to go back and create that original delta. See what happened. I didn't click the original price. Set default 2. Now if I click 3 and want to get back to that one I just created, there it is. So I've done it fast, but I've done it a couple of times. Hopefully you can see how that would go. Now the shadings in the matrix can be set up using this S button, Show Standard Deviation Shadings. And what that does is it populates this Volti box here with the current statistical volatility, which then creates a standard deviation range for the various expirations. And you see here in this first one, it's easy to see that that pink range there is the first standard deviation. If I scroll up a little bit, the blue highlighted area is the second standard deviation. For that expiration only, over here it's different. On the February, I have to scroll up quite a ways to get to the end of the first standard deviation. Anything outside the blue, which we can't see here in this case, is the third standard deviation. You can see it over here. Let's say you're not really particularly thrilled with these colors, which I'm not personally. You can actually customize them, and a new feature in the program is to be able to customize these colors according to basically any. If you want to define a custom color, you can just click on the rainbow here, anywhere along here, and customize a hue, a color. So we just click Add to Custom Colors, and click OK. Or you can just click any of these, the default colors. And that has always been there. What's different now in the new versions is this Define Custom Colors. You can see it down here. If you want to create a color, just click anywhere on this rainbow and it'll show up down here. And then click Add to Custom Colors. And it shows up there. Highlight it, click OK, and there's my first standard deviation. If I click OK now, I see it changes everything. The gray bar is going to just be a variant of whatever the color you select for your first standard deviation is. You don't really have a choice over that, but it does tell you where the at-the-money strike is. And then the first and second standard deviations you can alter. You can also alter the preference for the quotes display. Same idea. You could make it any color that's in here that's available. Whatever you like. It used to be a green. You could make it yellow if you like. No, don't advise that, but anyway. So there you go. Enough on that. So I'm just going to return to the defaults. A little easier to see. Now what I'm going to do next is display setting up an account. We already have one account here because I created it prior to the presentation, sample 1. We're going to get to that. I made a little log record of a back test that I was doing. One of the features of OptionVue is back trader, so we'll get to that in just a minute. But one way to set up a new account, what it comes with is that account 1, but you can create any number of accounts just by going to Info, New Account, and we'll call it Test Account. And we can put in an amount here. We'll put in 20,000. You can uncheck slippage, which my preference is to uncheck the slippage. Don't include that. Include the commissions, which we're going to set that commission schedule to whatever you are paying. I'm going to use $1, no minimum. That's what I have with Thinkorswim. And you can also set the number of shares or the price per share. So once you get all that, you leave these at 0. The interest rates, the earnings rates, and so on are really not much of a factor with the interest rates as low as they are. You can just leave those at 0, click OK. And now we have an account. And what that does is gives you a brand new place to store information. So what we're going to do now is put something in there. The way you do that is, let's see. So there's our trade column. You have to enter something in the trade column. Let's say we wanted to trade the February at-the-money call. We wanted to buy, so we're bullish on Apple. We're going to buy 1 February at-the-money call, 1945. If I convert that, what it happens is it flips over to the existing position column, and now in the T-log it shows it a record of it there. If my execution was different than what you're seeing here, you could change it. Say I executed it 19. Say I got a little better fill than the current price. I put in $19. Say my commission was a little different. You could change that as well. All of these are pretty much read-write. You can change them to your specification. You don't really want to mess with these over here. Those fill in automatically. Now we've got an existing position. So once you've got an existing position, you can analyze, or if you just wanted to analyze from the trade screen, you can do that. So this is what I use OptionVue for every single day. I've got my positions in an account, and by just clicking Analyze, then it shows up a graph, and you can change the number of timelines here. What I like to see is all the timelines. So you wanted to monitor how you would do in a certain number of days at a certain price of Apple. And you can then get a yield or a profit and loss. In the vertical axis over here, we can change how we're viewing the vertical axis. We can change it to yield. So it's going to give me a yield, and which is a good way to compare one trade to another. And I'll show you how you can quickly compare one to another in just a moment. So now we're going to, if we click and drag the little wand here, this vertical line has a box at the bottom of it. Just left click on that box, hold it, drag it, and then I can see in yield terms how much I would make at expiration at certain prices. You see I get to break even over here, and finally up at 586 I'm making 67%. What about if I wanted to see what would happen in 19 days? Click T plus 19. Again, click and drag this little wand. See, now I make a profit. If I get above about 565, I have a profit, and down below, or rather, there's my break-even line, that dotted line there. So anything above that, I'm making money. So at 579, I'd make 28%, and so on. So now, what if I wanted to compare that trade to a spread? What if I had bought one call and sold another one up here, and I want to compare that trade to my existing trade? Well, I can do that. Just click T, which means trade only, and I'm going to be able to analyze this trade or proposed adjustment, and click Analyze. So now I'm going to be able to see or compare how it would do at that price on that timeline. Say it was 19 days, and click that wand. I left it in the same place. I'm going to make 23% in that number of days at that price of Apple. And if I flip back, you can see here at that price, I would be down 13%. So quite a difference there. And if you wanted to, you could superimpose those two and drop the timelines down. The number of lines you're using gets a little confusing when you superimpose, so just drop it down to 3 is my suggestion. And then you can compare these timelines, these two trades, and see which would work out better for you based on your projection for the underlying. So back here, and if I didn't want that trade, I could get rid of it quickly. Just click Clear Trade, that pencil eraser here in the upper right next to Close. Open that up, click Clear Trade. And I want to show you something else which is different now about the program than the previous versions. It's a feature where you can clear just a specific expiration. Say I had a position over here as well, and I want to model this trade. If I bought the at the money sold up here and I wanted to compare those two trades, I can analyze just that one by clicking the header bar and then with the T clicked for Trade Analyze. So there we go. Now say I wanted to clear out just one of those. Normally how it works, if you don't have anything highlighted in the header bars here, isolating just that expiration, when you click Clear Trades, it would delete them all. And that's how it would have worked regardless if you had anything highlighted with the previous versions. But with version 7.38 and beyond, when you highlight a particular expiration and then click Clear Trade, it will clear out just the trades for March expiration and leave the February alone. Or a combination of them if you had several proposed trades, it would clear out whichever ones you were highlighted by clicking the Shift key and actually the Control key. You can click multiple expirations and have them analyzed. Or in this case now, it will delete out the trades for both March and April. To remove that, just click again, left click again, it's gone. So now I've created a position and a proposed trade. So say I want to get rid of that now and look at a put spread, a credit put spread instead of a, if I want to model something a little higher probability and sell this option, buy something down here. And so there we go. So now you can see how that would look in at that price in a certain number of days. Just highlight the T+19 line again and quickly see that 35% if I was using the debit spread at T+19. That's a longer term, 16 days. 2%. Back to the shorter term. Well, that was the combination. So this was the just long call. At T+19, I would be at that same price, losing 22%. So quite a difference there. So this stores anything that any graph that you've created will get stored as long as you don't close out the matrix. If I click Close here and then reopen those stored graphs that I have with these arrows, I can access them with these arrows in the upper right here, those will be gone. So you didn't like the way this one looked or it was an incorrect graph, you can delete it just by clicking the X and that one will be gone. Same with that. I could save just the ones I want to keep and continue on with my analysis. So now if I want to let's move into another topic here. Let's get the default set. So you have a lot of choices as far as how you want to set up the defaults for the program. And the quickest way to do that is to go to the View tab in the upper left. That's going to be a global setting for whatever you click in here. So if I click on View System Models, it takes me to this setting, and I can alter any of these. Those are pretty basic. You can just leave those alone. If I click View Default Models, this has quite a few different things that you may want to change. For example, the slippage is a hit bid ask by default. Let's say you didn't want to include any slippage. Every time you open a matrix, then it would have this particular setting. Now it's important to note that if you change this after you've opened a matrix, that already created matrix will be stored. It will not be altered by what you do in the view default, the global setting. But if you created a new one, it would carry these default settings. So I can also set up, say I was running an IRA, using an IRA, then I might want to put 100% in all of these. So because they basically have no margin. So there is no margin in an IRA. For example, you just put 100s here, then whenever you open a new matrix, it would have that margin instead of the default for a margin account, which is what it normally is. So you're trading options, of course, you need margin. So that's why the default is that way. But if you did have an IRA and you wanted to still model something and get the correct yield, that would be the way to do it. Now every matrix you open would have those margins in there. And there are some other ones in there which you may want to look at, but that gives you a basic idea. So then we can go to View Default Auto Strike, which is your strike ranges in the matrix. Now these are important. This is the way the matrix is going to open. It's going to have either a large extent range. Normally it's defaulted to. In the money options have a small extent. In other words, not many strikes that are in the money. And the out of the monies have a moderate extent. With people that do condors, that would most times be sufficient. But if you're doing way out of the money condors, you may want large. You could change these to always open with a large, or the largest extent for your strike range for calls and puts. You also have a preference here if you want to just display 5-point strikes, or if you only wanted the 25-point strikes for your indices. If you're only trading indices and you didn't want all the smaller intervals, you could check this box. More importantly, over here you could also include weeklies, which I prefer, and leaps. So if they're available, they will automatically show up. And that way every matrix you open will already have leaps and weeklies included. Now if you're using indices, you may want to limit the number of months. If you're not using further out months, you may want to change this. Normally it's going to show you 5 listed series. In other words, right now we've got the January, the February, April, and so on. If you knew you were only going to trade the front 2 months, you could change that to 2 or 3. And that will use less symbols, so perhaps enable you to open up more than one matrix, because the SPX has a lot of symbols. You could exceed your symbol limit if you're using all these, if you're using leaps and weeklies particularly. You may want to limit then the number of listed options and just change that down to 2 or 3. I'm not going to do it here, but you could. And that would apply again to every matrix you opened up. And then finally, the View Default Matrix will do essentially the same thing I was just showing you. It's just a different way to get to that. You don't have 3 additional settings here. These 3 will be the same regardless of how you access it, either from the Format button here or from the View Default Matrix format. Gets you to the same window. All right, so now basically you're set up into being able to use OptionVue to analyze your trades, and in pretty short order you can be up and running with the program. So now I want to get into some of the more advanced features. So what I did is I set up a test using BackTrader. So we'll get into that a little bit here. So if I wanted to use BackTrader, which is under the NetView tab here, I would simply click NetView, open up BackTrader. But before I do that, though, I may want to create a new account. So if you're using an account for your, let's say you got a Thinkorswim account and an IB account or a Schwab account, and you have all those set up, you don't want to create a backtest and add your transactions from the backtest into that account. What you'd want to do is set up a new account specifically for that backtest. So what you could do is go into NetView, BackTrader, and get it to the date you want to trade. Let's say we wanted to go back 1 year. So I'm going to use a hotkey here, and just flip backwards. Any date field in the program will be able to be altered using the hotkeys on the keyboard. I can flip one day at a time by using the right and left bracket key. I can flip 1 month at a time by holding the Shift key down and using that same right and left bracket key, which are just to the right of P on your keyboard. Hold the Shift key down, move left bracket goes backward 1 month at a time. Right bracket goes forward 1 month at a time. And then if I just hold it down, it will scroll 1 day at a time. Or if I hold the Shift key down and hold that left bracket key down, it will go backward 1 month at a time, and so on. Now if you want to go back 1 year at a time or just 1 year, just hold the Shift key down and use the less than or greater than sign. Less than is back 1 year. Greater than is forward 1 year with the Shift key held down. So that way you can quickly get to a date. I'm going to use this date here and click Start. So let's put it on an actual trading day here. So now everything, when you're in BackTrader as of this date, everything in the program will function with the exception of OpScan, which is real time only. But every other button essentially it functions as if you were in this date, February 1st, 2013. All these prices you see, if I open up a price chart, it's going to be as of that date. If I look at a volatility chart, same thing. It's going to show you volatility data from that date. And Trade Finder, which is another feature where you can search for specific trades, also will function as of that date. So what I want to do now is create a graph, or a new account, rather. The first step would be, once I've gotten into BackTrader and the data I want to trade from, create a new account, and that is that Info tab that we used a bit earlier. So Info creates a new account or alters existing account information. And so I could just say I want to test out Apple, call it butterflies. I'll start it with 30,000. When you're picking this amount, it is important relative to the lot size you want to use. You want to make it realistic so it shows you a return on your equity that would make some sense. So once I've got that started, make sure your commission schedule will carry over whatever you previously had in there. Typically, it's going to already be set for you. Just click OK. Now I've got that account set up. Next, I want to open up status. What status does is it's going to record the value as I'm advancing with my test in BackTrader. Each day that you advance, or to each date, will create a new value using the status window and also record it. If you create a graph here, which we're going to do in just a moment, you get a new value recorded for you. So it gives a performance graph where you can see your maximum drawdown. So what you want to do then is create a graph by clicking Report, just to the right of Status, Report, and then Performance Graph, and then bring in the date that you're in BackTrader. That's important because it won't show a graph unless you do by clicking this little box here with the arrow. That brings in that date that we're starting here, and now you see the graph. So once that graph is set, you notice it's starting at 30,000. So that's the difference if you started this account in today's date and then went into BackTrader on this date. Well, on that date you would have no cash in the account, so it would show you starting at 0, which of course would mess up your yield. So that's why the sequence is important. You want to go to the date you want to test, create the new account for your back test, and then open status, create the performance graph by clicking this button, and then we're set to go. So now you don't want to close out. The temptation here is to use the close button and get back to the matrix. The way you have to do it here is to not close the status screen out. Keep it open and click the window button that allows you to navigate around the program. Click the matrix for Apple, and then we're back to where we want to enter our trade information. So now, before I start this test, I might want to check out where Apple is at. I might want to put in this case, I want to put in some moving averages, say, for example. I can quickly do that using the View Change Indicator settings, moving averages settings. These are just a couple of ways you can customize your price charts. So if I wanted to add in a 200-day average, for example, and a 50-day, just check those boxes, put in the appropriate number. And these are simple moving averages. Click OK. OK, now it's overlaid, and I've got the 5200. Apple on that particular period was not doing that well. We might want to put a bearish trade on here. So we'll look at it from that perspective. So it would sell, perhaps sell a call spread on the March. So I sold a little bit out of the money here. Sell a 5-lot, for example. We want to do something that makes a little sense from a yield perspective. So I'll sell a 5-lot, buy a 5-lot. And before I convert that trade over into the transaction log, I might want to look at it and just see how that would look in terms of yield. You see I can make a 10% yield at expiration here. That's my maximum yield. And then you can also compare a new feature in the program and clarifying basically the difference between the Bell result, which is the default, including all probable outcomes for the underlying. Or you can say that I know I'm targeting Apple to be in a certain range and set my own price range. If I thought Apple currently at roughly 440 would stay between 415, for example, and 475, I'm going to get a different probability of profit than, let's see. See, I've got a probability of profit that P dot P shows probability of profit for the Bell result 83 under targeted results. Okay. I don't have a date. So I've got to put in second expiration. And now it'll give me a range. This hatch mark shows where I'm projecting Apple will be, and that probability number will be based only on Apple staying within that range. So in other words, it's not realistic from a real world perspective. But if you did want to do a what if Apple stays in this range? What is my probability of profit? That tells you. If you want to go back to the actual probability based on the current statistical volatility, which you can put your cursor on this little purple bar down here below, and it will tell you 27.5%. So one important feature of OptionVue is you can alter that statistical volatility that those standard deviations are being created on. And say you wanted to use an implied volatility number instead, or a projected volatility based on an increase going into earnings, for example. And you could look at the Volti chart and just say, okay, where is Volti now? What's the highest range that it's likely to go during my prospective trade? You might say, well, 35%. You can do a what if, and if I put 35% in here instead of leaving it at 27, you're going to get a much different probability of profit for that credit spread now. The yield didn't change. It didn't change the outcome profitability of your 10% didn't change, but the probability of profit of making that 10% did change. Now it's 77%, based on a higher volatility, 35%. Now note that if I change the Volti over here, Volti change on this box, it will change the profit loss curves and not affect the probability of profit numbers there for expiration. If I put in, say, an increase in volatility of 5%, that will change the implied volatility, the projected volatility of your options at various dates in the future. And that changes the profit loss curves. So if I click on one of those, that will change the probability of profit because it's changing the value of those options over time by increasing the implied volatility. So very important to understand that when you're looking at the graphical analysis, everything is theoretical here, and we can change the parameters. We can put in a statistical volatility, which will give us a different standard deviation range. In other words, the probability of a certain profit loss occurring. But if I put in a volatility change over here, that's changing the actual value of my options. Projected volatility will be different for these curved lines that have any time value, because the increase in implied volatility will affect that time value of the option, thus changing the profit loss curve. So I put it back to 0, and so we can see then quickly whether or not this graph looks better, or if I want to do a different trade, say I want to use the weekly instead, come in a little bit tighter. We sell something here, come up here, analyze that trade. Now I can do a quick comparison. I can either toggle backwards, excuse me, and see again using the wand at various prices and times to expiration. This legend, by the way, shows you today plus a certain number of days. T plus 40 days to expiration is what it's defaulted to. Typically when I look at a graph, I want to look at what it's doing today. So I might click that T plus 0 line, and then by clicking the wand and dragging it along, I can see what my profit or loss will be at the price I want to see, and it'll give me a yield. Or if I switch the vertical axis to profit loss, it's going to give me the dollar amount. It's good to look at either. But if you want to compare one trade to another, easier to do it in terms of yield. So now if I want to look at that timeline again, or T plus 0, what if it moved there today? A little bit different look, 4% yield. On this other graph that I had, it was a 3%. So you can see my loss would be a little bit less on the March. It's further out. It's not quite as susceptible, not quite as volatile. So you can tell quickly then, based on your risk parameters, which trade you would prefer. And you can also, as I mentioned earlier, superimpose one over the other. Drop the number of timelines down. If you just want to see expiration, you could do that as well. How to look at expiration. So that's the difference. If you wanted to see 3 timelines, bump it up. And then you can compare the hash lines, which are the T plus 13 lines, and see where the break-even is for those two right about there. That's your break-even for those two strategies, one compared to the other. The weekly spread outperforms the March spread at a price below 450, 455. That's roughly where they cross there. So you can tell that. So if you're expecting a move down, then the weekly would outperform the March spread below that price. So you can see that. So that's how I use OptionVue day in and day out. But now let's get into a little test that I already created here. So this is the setup. And now if I do decide I wanted the weekly, because I thought Apple would make a quick move down, go ahead and convert it. And the way we get it into the transaction log is to click Convert Trade, very important. If you just advance now in BackTrader, without doing that, it will not change the value of your profit and loss or your account because you haven't actually made that trade. So the way to make that trade, theoretically speaking, is to convert it. So now it's logged in, and I'm going to be able to track the profit and loss as I advance in time. And you can see it in the transaction log there. So once I've recorded the trade, now I start advancing one day at a time. And you're going to see the value, a gain-loss down here as we move forward. Let's see what we got here. So this is what's happening with the account. You can see that we've lost a little bit, and you can see how much in percentage terms. You lost 4%. So what happened? Well, Apple made a move up. So that credit spread, that call credit spread lost, and you can see how much. We're not seeing the summary section there, so I'm going to just close out the matrix and go back in. So there it is. Now we're seeing the gain loss down here. So we lost $1,175. So when I'm using BackTrader, typically I flip back and forth between the Analyze screen. So this gives me the trade yield at this point. Click the black dot. That's the actual profit and loss. We've lost 10% in this trade to this point. If I want to see in terms of return on equity for the whole account, then you click that performance graph, and it shows you, if I click the date, that you've lost 3.9%. If I want to see in terms of the price chart what's happening, you can see that how that movement in the underlying has affected your trade. So then we're going to advance another day, and we'll get new results, and it's going to track forward each day as you go. Now, what you're noticing here is that it might take a little bit longer the more things you open. So in other words, if I've got a ton of quotes in my quotes display, which I do in my actual program, I typically want to close that out rather than having it update each symbol in the quotes display, because every advance will update every single symbol you have open. So what I can do is just close that down in order to speed up the update. And then your matrix will be minimized in the lower left here. Just restart it, maximize it. And now it's just going to update this matrix. And if I had any other matrices open, same idea. Just close those down, and when you click Update now, it's going to move quicker. Now you notice it didn't have enough data there. It didn't have data. If you get in a situation like that, not every half hour of every asset is going to fill in. Sometimes there was actually a period where the data was missing. So what you can do is just flip between the half hour and get that data to fill in, or just flip back and forth a day, and sometimes that will bring it in. Okay, so now we're going to go forward again. You notice it's recording down below. I've got a loss here of 3,700. Apple's moving up pretty quickly, so you can see that a bad decision in terms of my proposed trade there, my tested trade. But that's how it works. And so now we're going to go to a little different idea here, and one which is more or less a new feature. And if you trade a lot of different strategies in the same account and the same asset, it can be a little difficult to group them according to how you like. So what I want to show now is if you do have that situation and you're having trouble grouping them, there's a way you can do that. So I created this little test here, and it's on the SPX, and I'm doing a little butterfly test. So you're going to see here in just a minute. We started that account on 1/14/13, so let me just move to that date in BackTrader. And I'll just highlight the date here and move backward to 1/13 using the left bracket key, and just holding it down scrolls backwards. And I'm going to move to that date. So what I'm doing with this particular strategy is at that point in time, Apple is here, and assuming that we're bullish on Apple, we're going to take advantage of the pullback. We're going to put a bullish butterfly on. So let's look at where that trade is. So anything you have in the transaction log is going to show up if you go into that date in BackTrader. So let's just make sure I'm in the right date, 114. So this trade should be there. And let's open up status. There it is. Okay, we're in the wrong asset. That's the problem. So and my strikes are not all there, so I'm going to use display all intervals, click apply, bring that in, so there they are. Click update. Whenever you change anything using the define window, and by the way, that is the way to adjust strikes. If you wanted to add strikes that weren't visible and you didn't get enough strikes using the largest out of the money extent, you can just click on that define window for the matrix, click options, and you could manually type in a strike. If I wanted to add in a 1705, click the down arrow. It'll just automatically fill in the rest, and now I've got that strike, 1710, and so on. No need to type the rest in, just click OK. The other way to do it is if you're at the extent on the matrix and you want to just right-click on, once you push to the maximum extent, and you don't have any more strikes, and you want to see another one, just click the arrow, right-click the arrow, and it will ask you if you want to add a strike. Just click Add a Strike, and you'll get another one. Same on the downside. I could right-click and add another strike below 1260 and so on. And now a relatively recent feature of the program is if you do have a position but it's just not visible, you'll see a little arrow over here to the right. So rather than scrolling, which is what you previously had to do, you can just click the arrow and it will move to that position. So it displays. So now the premise of this test was just to take advantage of, and I had the wrong chart up there, apologies for that. So here's the position. So that's a bullish trend, obviously. So we're going to put a bullish butterfly on, and we're just going to trade that weekly and see if we can generate a return. Just an idea, just a test. I'm not currently using this approach, but I might if this test works out. So that's one of the nice features about OptionVue. I can test with, just see if it would work, and before I put any real money into it, see what kind of return, and see what the drawdowns are. So there's the position, and as I go forward, you're going to see the gain loss down here. And so the idea that with this trade is that it's going to generate a high yield. We don't have a huge probability of profit, but you can see the probability of profit's relatively low. But if the underlying, the SPX, does what we think it will do, go up, see we're going to be in the profit zone here, and we're going to generate a big yield. So when you have a low probability, the idea being you want to generate a big return because you're going to lose fairly often, assuming that it moves outside your profit zone, you're forced to take a loss. When we do win, we want to get a bigger return. So what I targeted here was 30% for my initial profit, and then I'm going to take off half of it and go for a much larger percentage on the second half. 100% is what I picked. Or if it gets to the last day, just close it out. So the reason I did a 4-lot is so that I can remove half of it. So I would remove the, it's actually a 2-lot butterfly. I'd remove one lot of it when it hits 30% and another lot when it hits that final target or it hits the stop. So, and I also decided that I'm going to use a very small percentage of the overall account. You notice I had a 30,000 account value. I'm only using a small percentage of that. So in other words, I'm not risking, with a low probability strategy, I'm not risking very much money here. So if it does go against me, my maximum loss is a relatively small percentage of the overall account. So I'm going for a big return on a small a risk of loss here. So we'll carry on. And actually what happened was I did hit that target. And the way I can keep an eye on this actually a little easier without having to flip to the graph all the time, because the graph will tell you what your yield is. By putting your cursor on the black dot there, I can see, if I leave my vertical axis in yield terms, I can see what the yield is, 24%. Now if I wanted to see that all the time while I'm advancing, I can do that. So what you have to do is minimize in order to get this side-by-side graphical analysis to show up, which is a feature that was added quite a while ago. We're going to restore down, normalize the matrix, and then we can size it according to how we want. And then we can click the side-by-side, and it's going to open up a graph. Now as we advance, it's going to be interactive. The analyzed graph will not change once you've opened it. It stays the way it is. It's not affected by anything you do in the matrix or any other part of the program, but the side-by-side graphical analysis is. So you can actually then follow along with your trade, and then you're going to be able to see quickly when you hit your profit target. If I wanted to zoom in a little bit, I'm a little bit too far zoomed out. You can either use the plus over here and click that and zoom it in, or just click and drag along the horizontal axis. We'll zoom it in. If I want to move it over to the right a little bit, just click the R there. So now we're going to make sure we're in view and advance another day. I can also step through, instead of one day at a time, I could step through 1/2 hour at a time. If I'm near my target, I may want to do that and make sure I hit my correct execution. The S means 1/2 hour advance, or I can click multiple times. As long as you're on delayed updates, you can click multiple times and advance by 1/2 hour, an hour, 2 hours, whatever, just by clicking multiple times. So 4 clicks would be 2 hours. And same with the D. The D is 1 day forward. And if I clicked it 3 times, it would advance 3 days. So now you can see here I've hit my 30% target, and that's why I took off that 1/2 of the position. Now in the second half, I'm looking for a 100% return. So I'm going for the big hit on the second half. The stop being if it gets to break even. But I don't want to include the previous realized gain or loss. You notice here that there's an asterisk down below. That means that your gain loss here of 393 and the yield based over here is based on a previous gain or loss of $196 in the notation section, description section, your graph up top. You've got 196 previous gain or loss. If I don't want to see that, click the little asterisk. Now it's just showing my gain loss for this particular trade. Click the graph again. Now it didn't change that time when I did that over here, but it'll only change if you put things in the trade column. The graph will be interactive. But otherwise, you can change things with a setting or the gain loss, previous gain or loss. Click the asterisk, and it will then take away that previous gain or loss and show me that I have now a 24% gain on the remaining position. So I just had to click the side-by-side again to get that filling in now. So here I go again. I'm advancing. Now let me show you what I did with the notation in the transaction log. I know we're running out of time here, but this is kind of an important thing. We have people that are very active traders and are doing multiple adjustments on the same butterfly or doing condors, butterflies on the same asset. One important feature that's been added recently is a strategy tag. So every trade that I put in the transaction log, I could right-click here and or just highlight that field and put in a strategy. So you see I've put in a butterfly for all these trades. They're all butterflies. It's not really necessary if that's all you're trading as butterflies. You would just know that. But if you're trading a lot of different strategies, it could be a very useful way to sort and help group your trades. So assuming that you're trading only butterflies, then you may need a little bit more fine-tuning in order to be able to group them properly, because you can group all your trades together using this R column in the transaction log. Any trade that you put the same letter next to for the same asset will group together. The problem is if you had a bunch of trades and put on over a period of a month, you might have trouble then sorting out which trades to group together. Well, there's a bunch of different features in the program that will help you be able to easily spot how you can put your groupings together. So the first one would be just to say you're trading a bunch of different assets. We can just isolate by using that drop-down arrow. It opens up these windows. Under asset symbol, you could type whatever. It'll populate with whatever symbols you've actually recently traded. Just highlights that we only wanted SPX. In this case, I've only traded SPX, but there it is. Now I'd only see SPX in my matrix. If I want to further fine-tune then, if I labeled butterflies, condors, calendars, etc., I could then only include butterflies, and it would isolate just those trades. And then if I was still just trading a whole bunch of butterflies on the same asset and you needed a further way to fine-tune it so you could more accurately group them, what I've done is create a notes column and specify the weekly that you're using. So it adds a little bit of information. Instead of just SPX weekly 1, it's the January one. So in other words, if you're moving on to February and March and so on, you'll be able to distinguish between them easily. And now you might think, oh, that's a lot of work typing all these in. Well, what you can do is actually just copy, right-click, copy that. So if you 3 trades for a butterfly, you just type it in once. The first time it's there, copy it, and then click there, and then right-click paste. And that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, if you are more familiar with the keyboard and the Windows commands on the keyboard, you can use a Control-C to copy. So you've typed it in once, and you just use Control-C, and that will copy it. And then you use the down arrow and scroll down and use Control-V. I'm going to just do it here quickly. If I had an open line, I could use Control-C, down arrow, Control-V, and I just pasted it in there. So you could do that as many times as you needed to. And once you've typed in whatever the strategy tags you have created over time, if they're close to what you already have, say you're moving on to the weekly March 3, so I've designated whether one is an open or a close, so that helps you to note when you're looking, you can see where you're at with your trade. You can see whether you've got the weekly March 4 is open, because that's the last transaction there, and so on. So it helps you to organize your trading. But if I wanted to create a weekly March 3 open, I might just copy this one and then put it down here, and then just overwrite what I wanted to say on March 3 and open. I don't have to retype the entire thing, just highlight it again, Control-C, and then arrow down, Control-V. Control-V is paste. Quick way to do it, and once you get the hang of it, I think it'll save you a lot of time, because one of the things that can happen is you've got multiple expirations, multiple trades going. It's going to be hard to get them grouped properly. And that grouping is really the key to being able to analyze your trading as you're progressing in the program. All right, well, I think we covered a lot of ground here and maybe a little bit too much, but so if you have any questions, let me just go to the chat section. Let me see. Anybody have any questions on what we went over? Anything I can answer quickly? Okay. I don't see anybody saying anything. All right. Well, thank you for all of you attending, and talk to you again in a few weeks. Have a good day.